Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Homestand Show. Listen, we're in the dog days of summer, but there's so much going on in the Toronto sports world. There is, James Sharman, Justin Pooni, Albert Vartanian.
I guess there is. You're right.
There is a lot going
good
on.
Things.
They're the
Raptors,
home of the
Leafs, and the Blue Jays, who won last night.
I forgot what the most embarrassing team in
I know,
North
we're going to
American
get
sports.
to that. That's later on in this block. Toronto
Okay.
FC. Jesus Cristo, what is going on with Toronto FC?
Jesus Cristo?
Jesus Cristo. I've got to pray to Jesus Cristo because I don't know what's happening with Toronto FC. They lost again, and we will talk about that shortly. But the Jays beating the White Sox yesterday. They won a series opener. First time, I think, in forever this season. It seems like they never do that. But the big news coming out of yesterday's news in terms of the Blue Jays is Alek Manoah is back.
Yeah.
According to John Schneider, Alek Manoah is going to start on Friday against the Detroit Tigers.
Seems a bit of a rush job, doesn't it?
Your initial reaction when you saw that news?
Well, I thought the All-Star break's next week. Why not wait another week at
Exactly.
least and bring it back after the All-Star break? Or is it just getting back in town with their pitching staff and work with them a little bit, in Toronto? I don't know. To me, it seems really rushed.
I think it's a dangerous game they're playing because if they bring him back up and he gets shelled, right? in
Which is
Detroit,
very possible.
It's very possible. We just heard last week he gave up 11 runs to a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds in Florida, right? Which we don't know the context of what he was doing.
Apparently, it was much more than the box score.
If
Mechanics look good.
if he gets destroyed and lit up in Detroit like
Yeah.
a Christmas tree in July, does that ruin his confidence again? And is
Of
it
course,
gone
I would
forever?
think so.
Exactly. So I would, like James said, I would have waited. Just make sure he's 1,000% comfortable and confident to get back because you don't want him to come back up, be unsure, and then he's ruined.
So just to remind everyone, he was sent down June 6th, which is about a month ago
yeah.
today. He was recalled. So, yeah, like I said, he's going to play against the Tigers, which it's a good spot. I mean, if you're going to bring him back against the Tigers, they're like bottom 5 in all offensive categories. They just lost to the A's yesterday, 1-0. Shout out to Sean McCormick, who called the under. I don't know who bets the under in the A's-Tigers game. But Sean McCormick,
True
you
DJ.
got to listen to that guy. So he had 2 starts in the minors, one in the Florida Complex League, which is basically the lowest division in terms of minors. 11 runs, 10 hits, and 2 homers. So the box score wasn't great. And then he had a start in Double-A just a couple of days ago for the Fisher Cats. 10 Ks, 5 innings pitched. I saw some of those highlights. He looked pretty good. Had his swagger back, but if this goes wrong, the Jays are in a horrible spot.
It has to work.
So this is what I think, that they're desperate for pitching. They've been running a 4-man rotation. They do not want to do that anymore. That's unsustainable. You're not going to win that way. And bringing him back now allows Gosman to have an extra day off heading into the All-Star break, which is good. And I think they want to see what Manoah has against a really bad team in the Tigers, not at the Dome, on the road, less pressure maybe, to see, hey, does he have it back, or do we really need to go out there and get an innings eater at the trade deadline, which I think that's the case. But that's a risky move. That's a very risky move. I know you have Hyun-Jin Ryu and Chad Green, on track to come back at some point.
I still think it's just simply...
but you need him.
It demonstrates the lack of depth, right, in the organization.
Yeah. This could just end so badly. Like, if he does get shelled, like, let's say he doesn't last 2
comes back
innings.
and he throws
on the flip side, what if he
7
plays-
great innings.
Not
He's
even
been
that.
doing
What if
this,
he just
but
five-
listen, he's been doing this since the beginning of the season. How can it switch over after 2 starts in the minors?
Well, it switched over from poor basically from the last year in the playoffs to being poor to carried on. But during the regular season, he was a very good pitcher, right?
Yeah,
So
the switch was hit last year from
switch was
great
hit
to
last
bad.
year,
Guys,
just
he
like
has an
that, right?
ERA over 6. We're not that far removed from that outing against the Houston Astros, where he didn't even last an inning.
Yeah.
In
It's
the
a gamble.
majors.
Look, it's a massive gamble.
I know,
they're
I'm not
hedging
gonna, and I'm not
here.
going to pretend to know like I know what's going on down there. But from what we're seeing, we all see the same things. He's kind of lost it.
This team is also desperate. Like, look,
That's what I'm saying.
they're in a very difficult position right now, standings wise, and they're desperate because this team has so much pressure to, and expectations they have to live up to. They have to make these big risk moves because they're running out of options and running out of time soon to make ground.
You know what it is too? A lot of this has to do with the Blue Jays bats as well. They haven't been good enough. What, they're a game out, maybe 2 games out of a wild card spot. So if they weren't in this position, if they were heading into the All-Star break in a playoff position, maybe they wouldn't have made this call. That's just my assumption.
The breakdown this year has not been the pitching. It's been the bats.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? The bats have been poor, right? They've been hitting too lightly, and if they'd been even close to the last couple of years, they wouldn't be in this position. And they could give a guy like Alek Manoah more time, perhaps.
Well,
So
look,
blame the bats.
Yeah. Shout out to Vladdy, who seems to be turning it around. Did 2 home runs in his last 5. Had a big clutch homer yesterday to beat the White Sox. Barrios on the mound for the Jays, taking on Lance Lynn, who's been horrible. So I like the Jays tonight. I want to get your take on this before we play this clip. Toronto FC, they lost once again 4-0 to Orlando City. Bernadeschi sent off. That's 3 wins in 22 games, 13 points out of a playoff spot with 12 games left. You have Berna and Insigne making about $14 million combined. Have you seen a disaster like this in terms of Toronto FC ever?
Listen, there's been many a disaster at Toronto FC over the years. I was speaking to former players at TFC recently about this, and they said when things are bad, they were bad, but nothing like this because the expectation was so high before the season. And these big money players that are coming have just not got the job done. Again, last night, Insigne injured, not available. There's lots of rumours about him moving to Saudi Arabia at some point. This promises to be the most cataclysmic season in TFC history. It really does. This is a team that was some people's picks to win the whole thing, at least go on a deep playoff run. They're not going to make the playoffs. And I feel so bad for Terry Dunfield. Great guy, good football man, being thrown into this pit. And he's got to turn it around in 2 more games? I really hope they do the right thing with him. And when they find the full-time coach, they keep Terry at the club because you see other clubs getting rid of staff, and that isn't always fair. And he's a good coach with a lot of potential in this poison chalice right now. It's a tough place to be.
Lorenzo Insigne did not play yesterday. Unknown injury, I think.
On the same day, he changed agents too, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the rumors are circling.
He's missed a lot of action this year with these injuries.
Yeah,
so.
Saudi Arabia is calling for Insigne, and who knows? I mean, based on the salary that he's making, he can make more in Saudi Arabia. He might leave Toronto FC.
He can leave for the money?
No. I didn't even mention Jordan Horrobin's going to join us shortly to talk some Jays. Chris Johnston's going to join us to talk William Nylander, some contract talk again surrounding the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Speaking of mercenaries.
After the break, Noor Zainab will join us. We'll talk some Raptors, and Michael Grange wrote an article about some unrest, some turmoil in the Raptors dressing room. We'll get to that coming up after the break. All right, let's talk some basketball here on the Homestand Show. We're now joined by the one, the only Noor Zainab. Noor, how you doing?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime.
Let's talk some Raps. So Michael Grange drops an article last night about the Toronto Raptors and kind of the goings-on behind the scenes and some turmoil in the dressing room last season. He's reporting that sources have described a team where the veterans, Van Vliet and Siakam especially, were deeply frustrated with younger players on the roster, and Van Vliet let them know about it, something the younger players didn't appreciate. I'm going to assume the younger players is younger player in Scotty Barnes, but we'll get to that later. I want to play a little fact or fiction with you guys. Okay. We'll start with you, Noor. Dame Lillard, his name is all over the place. He's going to be leaving. He wants to go to Miami. He doesn't have a no trade, which I find so interesting, which means he can actually go anywhere. I know you said, well, he'll...
Shh.
Okay,
just
I'm not going to get to that.
let her go first.
Anyway, I believe that if you're a team like the Raptors or any other team that can afford to go out and maybe send out some picks or whatever the case may be, go bring in a superstar like this because this doesn't happen all the time. My opinion. Fact or fiction, the Raptors should be all in on Dame Lillard.
I'm going to say fiction, and only because I don't think the Raptors have the direction figured out yet. And Damian Lillard, even if you'll get him, it's not going to be like the Kawhi deal where you go all in and you come back with a championship because you still had a great roster around Kawhi. Whereas now, you don't even really have a point guard properly. You don't really have a backup bench anywhere close to that. And if Dame walks, you gave up Pascal Siakam for virtually nothing because you only had Dame for a year. And where do you even go with Dame? I don't think you go that far.
Well, that's if Siakam is a part of the deal, right?
I would assume it would have to be Siakam part of the deal,
yeah,
right?
you would have. But the thing with Dame is
I would rather send Siakam there and get their younger guys here and create a younger team. Because if you look at it, like, yes, the Blazers also have Damian Lillard, who's a great player, but they have a great set of younger guys there as well. So if you go and target those, you can now have a great 11-man rotation where you might not have like the greatest guy on the court, but you have a bunch of individual pieces that can put together some wins. So I would rather do the deal the other way, where you send Pascal there, which I know is not going to really fly if Dame wants to and ultimately go to Miami regardless, but I just don't see him working out here. I feel like he's gonna walk anyway.
So Noor's fiction. You?
It's fiction, bro. Like, come on. Why would Damian Lillard want to come to Toronto?
Are we agreeing?
Yeah, we agree. Surprisingly. And look, Dame's got 4 years left on his contract. He's got 4 years left on his contract. But he's made it very clear he wants to go to Miami. And who runs the NBA? Not the owners, not the front office, the players, right? And this is what's going to happen. If Dame gets traded to a destination he does not want to go to, right? And he puts up a fight, other players will notice that and never sign in Portland. Now, not saying that free agents ever came to Portland, but it affects the the mass appeal or the mass opinion of the Blazers league-wide amongst players, right? So they have to kind of capitulate. I bet you didn't know I could use the word capitulate in a sentence.
Wow.
I
Did you just surprise yourself? Is that what you did?
Yeah, I think he just did.
The Blazers have to capitulate to what Dame wants because he's been the epitome of loyalty across the NBA. So they're going to do him right. It might take another team or two to get involved in this trade. If the Raptors want to get involved in a Dame trade and ship out Pascal Siakam and somehow get some assets from another team, right? You can do that, right? They can be a part of a Dame trade, but just not get Dame. Yeah. That's more likely than them breaking the bank for Dame Lillard, who's going to require a whole bunch of assets to strip whatever they have left, and they're not going to win anything.
I'm not saying it is going to happen, but I do believe the Raptors should be 100% all in for Dame Lillard. This is eerily similar to when Dwayne Casey was fired and they let go of DeMar DeRozan. You're bringing in a new coach.
I'm just saying
the situation. The situation
no, it's not. It's totally different.
No, I'm just the way everything is playing out. It's similar. It doesn't mean it's going to happen exactly. But if you're the Toronto Raptors, this doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen a lot, but
Messiah's done something similar before. You go all in and do whatever you can to bring this guy in and figure out the rest after. Because I'll tell you why. Look at the East. Okay, I know the Bucks have Giannis, but they're getting older. Look at the Celtics. I don't like them without Marcus Smart. Embiid, how healthy is he going to be? What are the Sixers going to do with James Harden? The Cavs are going to be better. The Knicks are the Knicks. The Nets and everyone else falls in between. They're in that playing category. If you go out get him, you bring in a few more pieces and somehow make a team. 2 years with Dame, 2 years left in his contract.
There's 4 years left on his contract.
Whatever. I'm just saying those 2 years remaining on his contract.
He re-upped. He's got 4.
Okay, so even better, 4 years. But I'm just saying, even if he's there for 2 years, I think the Raptors have a chance to actually make something happen.
Albert,
if they can.
The Raptors, when they got Kawhi, were a team that was first place in the Eastern Conference that just couldn't get past LeBron. This team didn't even make the playoffs last year.
But it's about what you also give up, right? For Kawhi, you gave up DeMar DeRozan, who was a great one swap already, and then you got Jakob Poeltl, who came with you, right?
And a first-round pick, I think, or whatever it was.
And you also made $5 million in tax from that deal. So with this, it's more so just like, what do you give up to get over there? And would they not prefer to send him somewhere where they might have more assets coming in, where they know that Dame will be happy? Where I think for me is Miami. But again, it's what do the Raptors give up? Like, do you have to give up one of either Scotty or Siakam?
Yeah,
one of them has to go.
Well, you're not
100%. Why not?
You're not going to give up Scotty Barnes for Dame Lillard.
Let's move on. We're not going to. It's fine.
I'm actually surprised.
It's actually fine if we don't agree. By the way, that's okay.
The biggest surprise in this is that you're getting me worked up, and I'm actually agreeing with her. That's actually crazy.
I'm saying hell has
just
frozen.
Go all in. Doesn't mean they're going to get him, but go all in. Next one, Noor Zainab. Fact or fiction? Raptors have to move one of Siakam or Scotty Barnes.
Oh, definitely Siakam.
Why?
He's got to go. He cannot. You let Fred VanVleet go the way that he did. There's no reason to keep Siakam anymore because he doesn't fit your timeline. He doesn't fit anybody on the court either. If it came down to me and you had to pick between Siakam and Freddie, I actually would have kept Freddie because Freddie provided more of a role on that team. Where now with Siakam can't work with both Scotty and Jakob Poeltl in the paint. This is a very clogged offense that will not work well, especially with barely any guards on this roster. Yeah, you got Dennis Schroeder, but I mean, he's more of your bench guy than he is your starting guy. So I think Pascal has to be the one that goes, and he will be the one that probably gets you the most return right now, and he helps you pick a direction, which is a younger team. You've got Grady Dick, you have Scotty Barnes, and you claimed Gary Trent Jr. OG Anunoby is still on that timeline too. So if you get Pascal out of there and bring in a bunch of younger guys, which we can look at Atlanta is this big, buzz happening over there about Trae Young following Pascal Siakam on Instagram.
Yes.
This is, ladies and gentlemen, we have got to the Instagram following section of the NBA pages today now. That's where we are at. But if that's the case, I think Atlanta is the perfect spot for both teams because whatever the Raptors want out of that, which is to stay good right now, they can bring in Murray, or they can go target their younger guys in Kobe Buffkin and and DeAndre Hunter, all those people that can make the team better. So for me, it's easily Pascal Siakam.
Plus you have potential beef between Siakam and Scotty. That's why I posed this question.
Yes.
And also, look, Pascal Siakam's got 1 year left on his deal, $38 million almost he's going to be making this year. Then he's going to be a UFA, and he's been very open about he wants to stay in Toronto because he wants to get the full max contract.
He's hurting his trade value.
And I think, look, if I'm building on Scotty Barnes again, I have to agree with Noor. You got to get rid of Pascal Siakam. You've seen what Pascal Siakam, as your so-called quote-unquote best player, all-star, has done for you. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's time. Get him out of town. Get as many assets you can. Go young. Rebuild. And I'm going to watch out for the Dallas Mavericks to acquire Pascal Siakam. I think he'd be a great fit. They have to make the money work.
Okay, but Justin, it's not about the other team getting better. It's about the Raptors making sure that they get something out of there too, which is why Masai has a pretty bad rep around the league where they think that he's hard to deal with. But the thing is, like, you're not in the business to make the other team better. You have to get the right assets back for you.
I was saying just
but
watch out for the...
But you're talking about how the Mavericks are going to get better with Pascal Siakam.
I'm saying the Mavericks might be in on Siakam because they've already had it.
Okay, but that's
I'm not talking about the potential. I said watch out for the Mavericks.
But you're phrasing it to make it look like, oh, we're gonna give him away to make the Mavericks better. No, you gotta make the Toronto Raptors
See, you know what it was?
better.
She hadn't argued with me that we had agreed too much, and she just needed a way to find an argument.
One's got to go in. One of them should be in the deal that brings Dame Lillard to the Toronto Raptors. Finally, fact or fiction? Raptors finished with one of the worst records in the NBA. 90 seconds.
No. I think they'll be good. Fiction. I think they'll be good. I think they're not going to be winning, but I actually will give them the play-in battle again. I think they can easily get there.
What are they going to be? 39 and 40, whatever, 41?
Fact or fiction?
Just say it.
It's fiction. They're not going to be the worst team. They're going to be stuck. They're going to be the worst situation. They're going to be stuck in the middle once again with no cap flexibility. That's the worst situation you can be in in sports.
Justin, hold on though. We agreed for a lot today. Just want to give
Congratulations,
you guys.
This is a great moment.
Yes.
Let's do a little
Hell is
applause.
frozen over.
You did not even hold on to that for more than 2 seconds.
Yeah, I did not.
They will not finish with one of the worst records in the NBA because they're going to be one of the best teams in the NBA when Damian Lillard comes to the Toronto Raptors.
Oh, God.
I'm on the Lillard train, man, big time. Listen, is it going to happen? Probably not. But they should be in that conversation just to be there. You never know what the deal could be.
Yeah.
Right? Anyway, Noor Zainab, you're fantastic as always.
Anytime.
Justin Pooni, you're a good guy once in a while. Okay, coming up after the break, let's talk some Jays. Alek Manoah called up by the Blue Jays. We'll talk to Jordan Horrobin of North Star Bets about it. Coming up next. Okay, welcome back to the Homestand Show. Albert Vartanian, James Sharman, Justin Pooni. As always, we were talking about Alek Manoah off the top of the show. And in case you don't know, he's been recalled to the Toronto Blue Jays. He's pitching on Friday against the Detroit Tigers in Detroit. He made two starts in the minors, one in the FCL and one in AA. Good outing in AA, which I guess they thought was enough to bring him back. So let's bring in our next guest, Jordan Horrobin of North Star Bets. Jordan, when you first found out that he's coming back and he's making a start on Friday, less than a month since being set down, your reaction was what?
I mean, I had to check and make sure that it wasn't a typo, that it was for Toronto and not for Buffalo, because I thought his next start was going to be for Buffalo in Rochester. I felt like the natural progression from where things have gone. I am genuinely very surprised that he is already going to be back with Toronto. And I think most people are. I think that's the most common reaction at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, you make the big move, you send him down, and then you recall him early. I mean, the All-Star break's next week as well. Why not just wait a week and see what happens? I mean, it seems to be rushed, does it not?
I think so. I mean, I think the risk outweighs the reward at this point because it was a big deal to send him down, right? I mean, you're not just sending him to Buffalo. You're not making up some sort of fake IL stint thing to kind of get him right quietly on the side. You sent him to your complex league in Florida, and you know the pitching lab situation is something people talked about a lot. So this felt like it was really sort of trying to strip everything down to the bare bones, figure out what's going on, take your time with the process, bringing him back. And here we are a month later, and he's coming back. It doesn't make sense to me. If he flops, then what? Where do you go from there? Do you give him another 3 or 4 starts of leash to kind of figure it out? I don't know that it's really worth it. I mean, if he's great, obviously we'll have a different conversation here. But of course, they need to know what he's like and where he's at before the trade deadline. But I think at least one more start in the minors first to kind of see where he's at would have made a lot more sense than bringing him up now and risking something, a potential calamity here.
So okay, he makes a start. Let's say he doesn't get shelled. What is a good outing for Alek Manoah in his first start back?
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, he's built up, right? So it's not like we're going to need to necessarily see 3 innings from the guy. He's facing the Detroit Tigers, which probably not a lot better than the Rochester Red Wings would have been anyways. So I think you got to see 5 innings from him and pitch control, command is probably the biggest thing. I mean, if it's 5 innings and 3 runs, that's not so bad if he's got, 4 or 5 strikeouts in there and the walks are limited. If you start to see the walks tick up or he hits a guy or 2 and things sort of unravel, that's where we have bigger concerns because command is what the issue was to begin with and release point and all those sorts of things.
Jordan, we know the Jays been running a 4-man rotation since Manoah went down. If he comes up and struggles, are the Blue Jays now put in a box where they have to be buyers for a starting pitcher come the deadline time?
Well, this is why this is just continuing to be confusing to me, because last Wednesday, when Ross Atkins was speaking to reporters, he spoke about starting pitching being the most obvious area for the team to add. And he gave the caveat of, while monitoring Manoah and Hyun-Jin Ryu. So, of course, those situations need to continue to monitor. But, at that point in late June, we're talking literally 1 week ago, starting pitching was deemed the biggest area of need for this team. So, yes, I would say if he does struggle at all, that will continue to be the case. But I mean, even if he makes, let's say, 3 starts here before August 1st, how good or how bad would he have to be to really change the team's mind from there? That's left to be seen. I think adding somebody who could be sort of a swingman type of guy and maybe take that 5th starting spot or maybe eat some innings in the bullpen probably is sort of a safer way to go if they can find someone that fits that mold. But I mean, if he's horrible, they're going to need to find a 5th starter somewhere. So we'll have to see.
But let's be positive, okay? Maybe he has got it figured out, and maybe he'll have a good start on Friday, and it's all great, back to where it should be. If that's the case, how does it affect the bullpen situation right now, knowing that they haven't got that bullpen start every 4 or 5 days?
Oh, I mean, it's absolutely huge. And I think what Trevor Richards has done in this time where there hasn't been a full 5-man rotation, that's not something that goes away. That's not something for the team to forget about. I mean, he's got one of the nastiest changeups in the game. It's so fun to watch. Even if you just search his name on Pitching Ninja, you'll see some really funny swings on that. But I think he's shown that he can take on a heightened role in this bullpen. I mean, you've got Romano on the back end, and he's your rock as the closer. Swanson has been largely very good as the setup man, but you could use Trevor Richards in a lot more high leverage situations. And if he doesn't have to be an opener or he doesn't have to be a bulk guy, then that just gives you more opportunities to use him in higher leverage spots.
Man, this Manoah situation is so incredibly interesting, but you're right though. It is such a risk. Hopefully it goes well. I mean, we're all cheering for him. We don't want this guy to come back and get shelled once again, but we'll see what happens. Let's talk about Vladdy. I mean, I don't want to do a little humble brag here, but me and Jordan called this Vladdy resurgence. I just want to say that.
Well,
so
it's not a very humble brag though, is it?
He's back. He's back. So
just an accurate brag.
Another clutch homer from him last night against the Chicago White Sox. John Schneider saying Vladdy's in a groove, and when he's in a groove, he's dangerous. What are you seeing from him right now? And based on what you're seeing, is it sustainable?
I think it's the type of thing where the confidence needs to be there, and once it's there, he is very dangerous. This is 2021 Vlad is what we all hope and dream for, right? And he was so fun to watch, and you knew anytime that he was up to bat, you wanted to be watching because something special could happen, and very often did happen. So to try to get back to that, you need a guy who has confidence, and clearly he's a guy who loves to be up in the big spots. I mean, Nick Ashburn for Yahoo Sports had an article out recently where he noted that Vladdy's weighted runs created plus in high leverage spots is 184, which is 84% above league average. And, high leverage spot is just a situation based on the score and the inning and runners on, that sort of thing. So the Blue Jays, generally speaking, have been very unclutch this year as an offense, but Vladdy has been very clutch. So when you see him coming up in a big spot, that's who you want there. That's who you want to have their bat in their hands. And it's been really fun to watch right now. I think any high leverage spot that you could have him in is the hope for sure.
Jordan, what do you make of Brandon Belt's immediate turnaround? He was struggling a lot earlier in the year. Now seems to be finding his groove. What do you make to his his hot bat he's swinging?
I mean, old man strength. Could it be that simple? I don't know. The guy, he's got an elite beard. I can only aspire. I mean, Justin, you're doing pretty well there as well. But
appreciate it.
I think I'm below the Justin and Brandon tier of beard here. But he's a guy that has been doing it for a long time. I honestly wasn't a huge fan of that signing for the Blue Jays in the offseason because he felt kind of one-dimensional as a guy that you're going to platoon against right-handed pitchers. But he's been very, very good, and you see he's in that 3 spot a lot right now, 3, 4, 5. He's in the heart of the order. And I don't know. I don't know if it's a bit of a revitalized thing playing with some younger players, but the series recently against his old team, the Giants, I think he was really loose. He came into that joking about how he wanted to embarrass Logan Webb's family, and then he did by homering off him. So those sorts of things are really fun, and he's definitely been a good news story for the Jays this year.
We're speaking with Jordan Horrobin of North Star Bets, and with one Jordan to another Jordan Romano, who's been fantastic, and I think he deserves a lot more credit. Listen, another save last night, 25, most in the majors. He's got good numbers, a save percentage about 89%. Yet he's not an all-star, but tell me what you've seen from him and what you've liked this season.
Yeah, so I didn't understand why he wasn't an all-star, but then I realized it's baseball's sort of self-imposed rule where every team has to have an all-star. So Emmanuel Clase is the only all-star for the Guardians. Michael Lorenzen's the only all-star for the Tigers. And there's one more guy in there that, Kenley Jansen for the Red Sox is the only all-star for them. So if any of those teams had somebody else, he could easily bump them. He's a guy that is such a treat for the Blue Jays to have. He's so tall and has such incredible reach that the fastball gets up on these guys before they can do anything with it. I mean, 95, 96, I'm sure feels more like 98 based on where it comes out of his hand. So he's been really fun to watch. And yeah, the saves, I mean, he's got the most in the league. Saves are not always a sticky stat, but situationally he's been really good in the clutch moments. And, you know, being a guy at the end of the game, a closer, I mean, it's such a what have you done for me lately gig. And, you know, he's given up a run in 3 of his past 5 outings, but I don't think there needs to be any panic about that because, like you said, major league lead in saves, and he's a guy who's really hard to hit, even on just 2 pitches.
I'm trying to figure out what the trade market is on beards. And is there something they should look at maybe? I'm sure the analytics have got some deeper stats about just
like
how...
a beard transplant, is that possible?
The what, sorry?
A beard transplant? Have we gotten that technology yet? I don't know.
I'm sure it's doable. It has to be doable.
Yeah, people are doing that, actually.
They are.
It's
It's
a real thing.
It's very common now, actually. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Like
Some people
follically
can't do,
challenged
like, the
faces?
connection.
Yeah.
That's just weird.
I don't know where they take the hair
I mean,
from.
we grow great beards, so
Thank
hey,
you. Not him,
we
but-
can't judge. On Romano, though, is he the one pitcher, though, they can't afford to lose? We know that they show they can lose Manoah, opening day starter, and just about get by. Is Romano the one guy they can't lose, though?
Well, I would say Gausman is right there too. I mean, that guy, every time he's out on the mound, you know you've got a good chance to win. So from a rotation standpoint, Gausman is absolutely irreplaceable. And, you know, a high-end starter I would always put slightly higher. But from a relief standpoint, yeah, Jordan Romano is about as good as they come right now in the game. And I mean, it doesn't hurt that he's got the local flavor too. I think fans love that. But in terms of his skill set, and again, just his size, you can't teach size, you can't teach reach. And because of what he offers in that department, he's hittable. He's harder to hit in ways that other pitchers can't really replicate.
Quickly, Jordan, you have the Jays winning tonight. You like Barrios on the mound?
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a pretty simple money line pick that I made here. Barrios is having an awesome season relative, especially to last year. Lance Lynn is having his worst year so far. It's been a long, pretty good career for Lance, but year 12 hasn't been treating him nicely. So, and he got shelled when he last faced the Jays in April, while Barrios' best start of the year came against the White Sox. It was 7 shutout innings. I think he struck out 9 guys. So yeah, I think he can shove, and I think they'll take the win tonight.
All right. Yes, they're laying -120 at North Star Bets. Jordan, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care.
Take care. That's Jordan Horrobin of North Star Bets. Yeah, the Jays, chance to win tonight. Barrios looking good. Like you said, Lance Lynn is a disaster. ERA over 6. We'll see what happens. Okay, coming up after the break, it's Chris Johnston of North Star Bets. He's going to join us. We'll get the latest on what's going on with William Nylander and the Toronto Maple Leafs. All right, welcome back to the Homestand Show, and it's time to talk about Justin Pooni's favorite topic, the Toronto Maple Leafs and William Nylander's contract.
I'm starting the Nylander Vancouver rumors right now.
Oh,
starting
God,
right
yeah.
now.
Just ridiculous.
Starting right now.
Everything is
Just
like going back, to the
Starting.
Canucks. Well, let's talk to someone who actually knows what's going on, and that's Chris Johnston of North Star Bets. Chris, on your podcast, you mentioned some things about William Nylander that made the rounds in terms of where the Leafs and Nylander are in terms of contract negotiations. What's the latest that you know so far?
Well, I don't really think they're anywhere, to be honest. I mean, certainly there's been some discussion and an offer made by Toronto's side to William Nylander. And I just think that they're so far apart that hasn't yet sparked further conversation, or at least further negotiations on the number. And so it's kind of, in no man's land. And I think that a couple of things are important to highlight here. William Nylander is signed for next season. There's not necessarily any sort of formal deadline where they have to get something worked out or not. And perhaps there's a world where he's back with the Leafs, and even if they don't do a contract extension, just playing out the final year of his deal. So there's still potentially a fair bit of runway. But right now, it just doesn't seem like they were able to catch any lightning in a bottle over the draft week and into free agency here. And I don't think that the sides see the world the same way. And so it's not necessarily a standoff at this point, but certainly doesn't sound like there's much progress that's been made.
Do you think Nylander is worth $10 million a year?
I think you can make the case. I mean, you look at some of the other players and what they've signed this offseason. You have Pierre-Luc Dubois at $8.5 million. You had Timo Meier at $8.8 million. You know, William Nylander has outscored both in goals and in points the best seasons of those players. Now, I think where some of the debate might come in is those players are 6'3", give or take. That they play center, whereas Nylander's a winger. I mean, there could be some, you know, that's probably where the finer points of the negotiation come in. But purely by the numbers, I don't think it's an outrageous ask. I just don't know if it's an ask that the Leafs could ever really even seriously consider. And, you know, it's hard to sometimes read a negotiation in real time. I mean, you know, there's always some emotional in these things. Obviously, anyone who's been through one will understand. Maybe you ask for a lot if you're the employee or the player. You maybe the company or the team is trying to keep you down, and you find some middle ground. You know, I think the question William Nylander has to ask himself is, you know, the Leafs are talking about an 8-year contract. The rules only allow him to sign an 8-year extension with the team he's playing for. And if Toronto, say, gets to $9 million per season on 8 years, that's $72 million total. To match that $72 million on a 7-year contract, if he became a free agent, he'd have to get more than $10 million per season. And I think some of it just becomes a numbers game that way in terms of triangulating, you know, what you can do. And you know, that's why I think it is still a little early to say where this is going, because I see, you know, a reason where both sides might start moving in a different direction towards each other, but that just hasn't happened yet here in the early days of July.
Just think about next summer, boys, and Mitchell Marner's negotiations. This is something it's going to be when he wants 15 a year. You know, this time next year it's going to be crazy. I look at this situation, CJ, and I look at the NHL and Gary Bettman and the current CBA and how teams are punished for drafting well and developing well. The only league in the world that don't give teams a little bit of a kickback in a salary cap kind of system. Has there been any conversation with the CBA moving forward, and you know, in the next one, whenever that is, about addressing that? Because to me, I see these teams, good teams who do well in the draft and develop well, getting just crushed at this time of their development.
Well, and that's the trouble with it, right? I mean, what the system does, because there's no, it's basically a hard salary cap in every way. There's no money that's unaccounted for. There's no exceptions to the rule. It's good for business in pure business terms. I mean, owners are guaranteed not to pay more than 50% of the revenues back to the people they employ, at least the players. You know, where it's not necessarily great is for individual teams, and teams like the Maple Leafs. I mean, it's good for NHL business when they're a competitive team, when they're playing in the playoffs. That generates more league-wide revenue. And so I think there can be a fine line to walk. You know, to my knowledge, that's never really been seriously contemplated. And you know, I kind of understand it from the league standpoint. I mean, it's a system that works well for their ownership. We can see it in franchise values just skyrocketing every time you see a team get, you know, revalued if maybe they're selling a minority share, or the sale of the Senators, which is, you know, in the process of going through now, is shown that, you know, teams even in smaller markets are basically billion-dollar enterprises at this point in time. You know, the next CBA negotiation is in 2026. There's a new head of the NHLPA, Marty Walsh. You know, we'll have to kind of see when he gets his feet a little wetter, I think, when he gets more up to date on the issues, if there's ways or creative ways the players might be able to get a little bit more slackness in the system. But I don't see what would make it happen, to be honest, because I think it really benefits the owners, and the owners carry the hammer in those negotiations.
CJ, let's talk about the moves the Leafs did make the last couple of days. Domi, Bertuzzi, Klingberg, and Ryan O'Reilly. Definitely adding some much-needed snots to this lineup. Which move that did the Leafs make that really caught your eye, or you felt was the best move Brad Treliving made?
Well, I mean, some of it's circumstantial, but I think the Tyler Bertuzzi signing is one that is going to, that the Leafs will feel good about, you know, this time next year when they look back on the season he had. And, you know, Tyler Bertuzzi, when free agency first opened on July 1st, had some longer-term offers from teams. You know, he ended up passing those up, and then, you know, the money gets spent quickly. And by the second day of free agency, when he signed with Toronto, there was really only a couple non-playoff teams that were willing to pay him. And then the Leafs 1-year offer, which I think was, you know, most appealing to him, because it gives him a chance to come back next summer when there will be a much higher salary cap as a free agent. And so, you know, given that I would expect he's pretty much guaranteed to be playing on the left side of two of Toronto's other best players. We'll see how the lines shake out, but it's possible he's playing with Matthews and Marner for much of next season. If not, I would expect them to be with Tavares and Nylander or some version of those players. And so I think between the minutes he's going to play with the line mates he has, the kind of power play the Leafs should have, I think Bertuzzi's in a great spot. And I think he fills a specific need because he's pretty aggressive forechecker, plays with high energy. And I think he brings a little different dimension to the top six that the Leafs haven't had in the past.
Right now, they're over the cap, obviously, with Jake Muzzin maybe going on LTIR, we assume. And let's assume there's a Matt Murray trade at some point. Are they still over the cap at that point? Or do they still need to do some other stuff?
It depends if they're retaining money in a Matt Murray trade. Right. I think that would be part of the question. Obviously they'd like to unload all of his, roughly $4.7 million cap hit, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. I mean, the other challenge with the Murray contract right now is it's actually a very high salary. He's actually owed more money than that actual cap hit. So you're not just dumping a cap hit on a team, you're dumping a lot of money that their owner is going to have to pay. And so I think that there'd be a cost to that. I still think there's a chance Matt Murray's bought out. The Leafs would get a second chance at a buyout window if they're taken to salary arbitration by a player. And I would, think that's going to happen with Ilya Samsonov. And so, they do have a couple levers to pull, but it's hard to imagine a world now where Matt Murray's back with the Leafs just because of the money they've committed elsewhere on the roster. I think between that, Muzzin LTIR and perhaps a couple other things. I mean, Brad Treliving would like to still make some changes on the Leafs blue line, and that might involve some money going out the door when you're bringing someone else in. I think that between those couple situations, they'll be able to get cap compliant well in time for having to do so for the start of the season. And, it helps that they have, the best cap guy out there in Brandon Pridham, who's always seems to be managing them, just under the tango line of the salary cap season every year.
CJ, the Leafs aren't the only team that's not cap compliant. Just can you explain how hard it's been for teams to fill out their rosters throughout free agency for the last couple years because the cap has been flat for so many years?
Yeah, it's really tough, and we've seen there's a few knock-on effects. I mean, it can be difficult on the players too, right? I think there's some pretty good players, even as we're recording this. Vladimir Tarasenko still not signed. Mm-hmm. Last year Nazem Kadri, if you remember, spent a long time on the open market, relatively speaking, before getting his big deal in Calgary. I mean, if it really is like musical chairs, and because I think it's 4, 5, 6 years in where we've only just seen modest bumps, if any bump at all, that has a lag effect. And it's going to be interesting to see now, following this year, it's going to go up by 5%, assuming revenues are where they're supposed to be in the NHL. And so it's going to go from 83.5 to 87 to 92. That'll maybe have a reverse effect where some players will be able to get money. We'll see more things pass around. But, I look at nothing more, Justin, than some of the trades we've had lately. I mean, Ryan Johansson basically giving away to Colorado for the cap space. Another number of other of those types of situations. Taylor Hall went from Boston to Chicago under those circumstances. I mean, useful NHL players now, if they have too big of a cap hit, they'll just give them to a team that has the room to absorb that. And that's kind of strange when you think of it as a concept, because it won't surprise me if Ryan Johansson has a good year for the Avalanche next year.
Will next year be even crazier, CJ, do you think, with obviously a lot more cap space available, more money available, and all these players on current one-year deals?
I think so. I mean, obviously a number of free agents, Matt Duchene elected to do a one-year deal in Dallas. You've got, Bertuzzi and Domi in Toronto. Dmitry Orlov took a 2-year contract going to Carolina, but obviously he could have had longer deals. I think a lot of players have just opted to want to come up again in these next couple of years and to try to hit it richer there. And so I think if anything, what it will do is we'll probably see more contracts. You're going to go like, holy crap, player X got that much. We didn't actually have a lot of that in free agency, really. I mean, if you look at the deal signed, it was a pretty modest period. You might have said, Alex Killorn, given his age, might have been the one deal. I was surprised to see him get $6.25 million over 4 years from Anaheim. I know he's coming off a great season, but he's also 33. That's one of those deals that you might be like, wow, that's a free agency signing. We'll see how it ages. But for the most part, it was a pretty modest period. I think what we're going to see next year in summer 2025 and beyond is more of those head-scratching free agent deals of the past.
Staying in Anaheim here, a lot of rumors about John Gibson, and obviously being linked with guess who, Toronto, but other teams as well. Do you think there's much chance of a John Gibson deal being made this off season, not just for the Leafs, but anywhere?
Well, certainly Anaheim has explored it and talked to teams about John Gibson. I think the challenge is the Ducks have been a kind of a bottom feeding team for the last few years, so his personal numbers don't look as good. And I think what you have to think about is that a decline in his play, or is that really reflective of a young team in front of him, kind of a rebuilding group. To what degree would you have confidence in John Gibson if you're a contending team to bring him in? The other part is he makes a $6.4 million cap hit. And if you look at goaltenders, I mean, that's top 5 right now in the league. And so if you're not sure about the performance, he's got several years left on that deal. I just think it's too hard of a contract. It's going to be too hard of a contract for the Ducks to move in this environment. It's not to say the guy can't play, and it's not to say that there won't be something that surfaces down the road. But, at this stage of the summer with so many teams, already spent pretty close to the cap, it's going to take a pretty creative deal, I think, for Anaheim to find a new home for Gibson before training camp.
CJ, before we let you go, just a quick update on the Erik Karlsson potential trade. We've heard Pittsburgh, Edmonton. Where do you see this shaking out for the San Jose defenseman?
Well, the Sharks really want to get it done. And I think, Erik Karlsson, it's in his best interest, too, to get a new home this offseason. So those talks continue now. I think that Carolina is the team that's pushing the hardest at this point in time. Pittsburgh, of course, loves the idea of Erik Karlsson. Would be a big splash for Kyle Dubas in his job, but there's a lot to be worked out, I think, on the Penguins end to make that all line up from a cap perspective. The Hurricanes, I think, have the desire to do it. I mean, a pretty bold front office there. We've seen them make a number of big trades. It seems like they're in on everything when you hear Carolina, and so I think that's most likely where he ends up. And an interesting part of this process is some teams have been given the ability to talk directly to Erik Karlsson about their situation, which is important. He has a no movement clause in his contract, so he has to be on board with whatever can materialize here. And really the only thing that's held it up. We see the guy's ability. He just had a 100-point season, another Norris Trophy, but his $11.5 million cap hit is just too hard for most good teams to take on. And so I think the negotiation really has to be player, the acquiring team, and the Sharks all kind of working together, because this is kind of a complex trade. I don't think we've ever seen a trade like it if it ends up happening.
One last question for you, CJ, before you go on vacation and we see you in a few months' time. When you come back from your vacation, how different will the Leafs look compared to right now?
I don't think they'll look too different, honestly. I don't see anything major on the horizon. Obviously, they have big decisions. They have big contracts potentially to give out with extensions to Austin Matthews and William Nylander. As I mentioned, I do expect that Matt Murray will be moved on from in some way, shape, or form between now and September. But I don't see them making any more big splashes. I just think they're too hamstrung by the cap. And as much as Brad Schleving, I'm sure, wants to put even bigger stamp on this roster, I think it's going to take some time for him to be able to do that. So, between now and this time next year, I think there'll be a lot, between the moves that can be made in season, and then, the Leafs are going to have some decisions next summer with a number of free agents again on the books. But I think most of the work is done now. And look, we can all talk about what the Leafs have done in the playoffs. The last 3 regular seasons, they were a top 5 team in the league. And so, I know that everyone has an opinion on what needs to change and what doesn't, but I think there would be a danger in changing too much here, because the core of this team has had a lot of success, and I think they're just trying to find a better mix around those players.
CJ, listen, great work as always, mate. Enjoy yourself, well-earned rest, and we'll chat to you in a few weeks' time.
It's going to be good, guys. Be well.
That's Chris Johnston of North Star Bets. When we come back, Sean McCormick, and maybe not Albert Vartanian. He may have just died.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back.
Woo!
I did not die, James Sharman.
Man,
I almost
we were
did.
really worrying there.
We
for
were.
a while.
I
He was
don't
hacking
know
his
what happened.
guts up.
I
Couldn't
felt
control
like
it.
I got like a little tickle, and then that was it, dude. It was a wrap. After you said Rhino Oral, whatever you said to CJ, I'm like, I just lost
I did not know that. I did not. I was made aware that during the break.
That's a classic moment, man. I might have to put that on a T-shirt.
I'd say don't worry, no one will notice, but everyone here noticed.
Yeah,
so,
of course. Everyone here
it
noticed.
probably means the tens of
I
thousands
didn't
of
know.
viewers.
I didn't know.
Well, shout out to you guys for holding it down. You
Yeah,
guys are
yeah.
good teammates. Chris Johnson, thanks for
I think it was
jumping
better
on.
actually without Albert.
Yeah, I think it
it
was
was
actually.
a lot smoother.
I don't know what you guys asked him, but it sounded pretty good. Now he's going on vacation. We won't see him for a while, but he's been fantastic throughout the season and the off season. So we thank Chris Johnston. Also, Jordan Horrobin, fantastic, going on vacation as well.
Yeah.
He's going to Japan.
What is
and we're
happening?
here.
Going
What
on
are we
vacation.
doing?
I don't know what's
I'm
happening
going
here.
on vacation. Tomorrow's my last day, and I'm on
Huh?
vacation.
When did that happen?
You
Tomorrow's
don't
your
know-
last day?
Tomorrow's my last day. I'm going on vacation.
We
for a
didn't
week.
sign off on this, dude.
How
You
long
gotta
you
do
away
your
for?
show.
A week.
Good.
Okay.
Good time to start a new
I'm
show.
going away in
I
August.
knew about it.
Yeah, he knew about it.
Hey, look who it is, Sean McCormick.
I approved it.
He approved it.
So it's my fault, guys.
All right, what do
Everybody's entitled to some vacation. What do you want
Yeah.
from me?
okay, it's McCormick's minute.
Some more than others, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can take some. You've already taken some. You went like skiing and
Wonderland for the
One
day.
day. One day.
Skiing?
Yeah, like in January.
Hey, don't you,
Skiing
don't
and
you
shit.
keep
I
up
took a
with?
day off in January, and the
Yeah.
freaking HR
wait.
executive over there is.
Excuse me, you're taking like all of August off. I heard from the rumbling.
Hey,
One
you-
week of August.
Hey, send in some emails. I need those dates, man.
I know. I'm going to Mexico. By
Just
the
don't
way.
rent a jet ski in Mexico.
Oh,
you don't want that whole story.
Hey, this is a great block. It's
This
the
is a great block.
H&R block.
Nice.
I'm scared, man.
I
I
hope I
will
don't
not
get
be
sued.
going on a jet
We're having
ski.
two different. They're having a conversation with something. We're
know.
having a
Don't wear
conversation
jean
with-
shorts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna wear
don't-
jean shorts all week long.
Oh, I'm wearing some jorts right now, actually.
And don't have a chocolate mudslide.
No, this guy
Oh.
is Sean McCormick is the jean shorts king, dude.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
I don't know what that means. If that's a bad thing. or
All right,
not,
let's
but-
get into some picks today.
All right, what do you got?
Okay.
We got a minute
Can't
left
be a
in the
good thing.
block. We got the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the Rays. The Rays are in a downfall, as Albert likes to say. So let's pounce on them with the Phillies and Taijuan Walker on the mound for them. Brios is going to have a great night for the Jays, so I'm going to take the Jays to win against the White Sox and Brios to have over 4.5 strikeouts at -108. And then the Mets and Diamondbacks. I'm going to take the red hot Diamondbacks. Excuse me.
Hot bats.
Hey, we're all entitled to one or two slip ups on the show, eh, Justin?
This guy's laughing. Why are you laughing at the?
Hey, Sharms, you had a perfect show, though. Congratulations.
It's
man.
never perfect, but it was
In my eyes,
Pretty close.
In my eyes, it
Damn
was
close.
perfect.
Jeez.
We got
I used to work
10 seconds
cataclysmic,
left.
didn't I, as well?
You said cataclysmic. You said.
Capitulate.
I thought you said diabolical. That's how I feel. It's been pretty diabolical. Okay, we'll be back tomorrow with more Homestand Show. So please tune back. Just come back. And watch
Well,
the show. I don't even know what I'm
smooth.
saying anymore. Congratulations.